The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, safety doesn't just happen by accident. It takes careful planning. To keep New York's roadways safe, DOT has developed a strategic highway safety plan, which is aimed at drastically cutting down on serious accidents and fatalities, with the ultimate goal, of course, being zero deaths.
Well, today we're exploring the key factors that make us vulnerable to serious crashes, what DOT is doing to protect all roadway users, and the changes we may see in the very near future. Joining us today for this conversation are Rob Limoges and Mary Harding, who have devoted their careers literally to making our roadways safer, and they're going to help us break all of this down. Welcome, Rob and Mary.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
We always like to start out by getting to know our guests a little bit better. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your roles here?
Sure. I'll go first. My name's Rob Limoges. I have the privilege of leading our Office of Traffic Safety and Mobility here at DOT. I've had over 30 years of experience here in different programs at DOT, but many of them have been either directly or indirectly involved with safety. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about safety and our plans and work with you all on this podcast.
So, Rob, tell us, what does that office specifically do? What is its focus?
So we have four bureaus in our office. We have our Highway Safety Bureau, which Mary Harding leads. We have TSMO Bureau, Transportation Systems Management and Operations. Becky Gibson-Schott leads that bureau. I think she did a podcast with you guys before.
Twice, actually.
Yeah.
So I know that was
seasoned veteran.
A big success. Mm-hmm. We also have Emergency Transportation Operations Bureau, led by Matt Vasilo, and Traffic Engineering Bureau, led by Barbara Abrahammer. So lots of various tasks we tackle every day for safety and mobility.
Mary.
Mary Harding. So I am the director of the Highway Safety Bureau, newly minted in January of this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I may defer to Rob on some of these questions since he's had the longer expertise in working in this area. But I have been with DOT for almost 20 years. I previously worked in our Safe Routes to School program in the local programs bureau. I've worked in project management, throughout the department and at the state.
Well, excellent. Well, again, welcome to you both. We're certainly glad to have you guys here. So I guess we'll start. We'll get right to it. The question is, what is the New York Strategic Highway Safety Plan exactly, right? What is it that we're talking about here?
Sure. The Strategic Highway Safety Plan, I call it the SHSP because it's a mouthful, right?
Because everybody likes acronyms.
Everybody loves acronyms.
For sure.
Yep.
But really what this is about is how do we plan for reducing and eliminating fatalities on our highways? So this plan is required every 5 years, and we work with our partner agencies, all the stakeholders that are involved, to come up with strategies on how we're going to eliminate these crashes. The plan leverages all the data. So we look at the crash data that's reported through the police agencies, our volume data, roadway data, all the behavior data that we collect, and come up with emphasis areas that we need to focus on collectively to reduce crashes. So this plan that we have published in 2023 is now in the implementation phase. So what the team came up with was 6 different emphasis areas related to both roadway, human factors, and emergency response. So really what the plan's about is how do we, each agency involved, leverage resources that we have to deliver programs to reduce crashes. So for example, for DOT, we're focused on things like pedestrian safety, intersection safety, roadway departure crashes. So these are things that we can directly impact with the programs that we deliver. Partners like at DOH, Department of Health, they may be doing education or outreach programs directed towards impaired driving or distracted driving or things like that. And law enforcement obviously is working on reducing speeds and other human behaviors that are related to traffic crashes.
So you collect a lot of data in your office, and you said that this is a plan moving forward based on what you've found. So what is the current data telling us about trends? What have we seen as far as changes maybe from 10 years ago to now?
That's a great question because we've been looking at that pretty closely. We had some trends where the numbers were steadily going down. We were decreasing fatalities, we were decreasing serious injuries, and then COVID hit. Nobody was on the roads. The people that were on the roads were treating them like speedways. Excessive speeds lead to a lot of crashes. So we saw an uptick in some of those numbers over the course of a couple of years. Starting in 2023, 2024, they started to come back down again. So the preliminary data we're seeing now is that the trends are going back down, which is a good thing. So we need to refocus, see what we can do, continue to work with our partners, law enforcement to continue to emphasize that speed is a bad thing. Distraction is a bad thing. We need people to focus. Drinking and driving is a bad thing. So it's really about working with our partners, getting those messages out, those education messages, that enforcement, and just trying to make the roadways, if people do, like Rob was mentioning, roadway departure. So if people do go off the road, we have, guide rails in place and different things to keep them from being very seriously injured. Or, if they are distracted, we have rumble strips on the side of the road, and it kind of gives them that little jolt, that little alert to kind of get back in their lane and stay on track and focus on what you're supposed to be doing.
Those numbers that you were talking about during COVID that went up, that there weren't that many people on the roadways, so it was like the Autobahn basically for some people. Have those pretty much rested back down to where they were before, or are they still a little higher than before COVID?
No, the good news is that the trend pre-COVID has continued. I think it's no surprise to everybody that the numbers during COVID, due to some things like you mentioned, Anya, went up because there was fewer people on the road. It's easier. There's no congestion, right? So you can drive as fast as you want.
I want to talk a little bit about, we talk about drivers and their behaviors, but they're not the only ones involved here. We also have pedestrians. We have bicyclists. How does your office use that data-driven approach to try to identify roads that, might require changes, and also determining, countermeasures that might work and those that might not, to not only keep the drivers safe, but also to keep everyone else that they share the road with safe at the same time?
Well, if I could start out, like in the big picture, we use data to look at all crashes. So what we have is a system called CLEAR, and that is our data system, our analysis tool. It's got a map and all the information from the police reports and from our volume collection data. But what we do each year is what we call a network screening. So we'll look at all the crashes on the state highways each year and identify hotspots. So it's like a mathematical analysis. We compare similar highways to those same type highways and determine, is this location above or below average? So what we end up with is something called a PIL list, or priority investigation list. And that list is used by our regional safety engineers to evaluate these sites and figure out whether there's countermeasures. So it's a programmatic way that we look at all of the roads that we're responsible for, identify areas that can be improved, and then propose projects to make improvements there. So you asked about pedestrians. So one of the ways we can do that network screening is to do it for all crash types or specific crash types. We can do pedestrians, we can do wet road crashes, we could do speed, all different types of factors to do that network screening. So that's one of the tools that we use.
So I'm just curious about this. Responsibility is shared when it comes to safety, and a motorist responsibility as well. I'm interested to know, what are we doing wrong? What are some of the most typical things, infractions or whatever? What are we doing as human beings that we really need to, maybe that aren't obvious? Like, we all know drinking and driving, don't do that. Don't drive impaired. But what are we doing on a regular basis that your office is finding that, we need to be more mindful of?
So this fits perfectly into the safe system approach. And that's, a category where we look at everybody has a role in safety. So it's our law enforcement, us as an engineering agency, DOH getting the message out, our EMS being able to respond to crashes when they happen quickly, administer that care. But it also looks at that human involvement factor, and humans make mistakes, but humans shouldn't have to die because they made a mistake. So we're trying to do what we can to make the roads safer. We have vehicle manufacturers making vehicles safer, but humans are still, I think they start to take things for granted. They think everything is safe around them, and they continue to do things that are not really in their best interest. So, it is speeding. It is distracted driving. It is the drunk driving. It is aggressive driving,
Right.
unsafe lane changes. You're going 80 miles an hour. You hit that congestion point. You still want to get through that. You start to look for, ways around that. I think we see it on the road every day when we come to work. Looking at, like Rob was saying, our clear data, our crash data, we look at those contributing factors. And is it a human factor? Is it an engineering factor? And what can we do with countermeasures? There's these proven nationwide, guidance that talks about certain contributing factors and how do we implement those countermeasures? And that's what becomes our projects. That becomes our safety studies, and that all plays into that. So.
But one other thing about behavior I want to make sure we bring up is behavior in work zones. So one of the key focus areas we have is reducing speeds in work zones.
Yeah.
So we have a program that's proven pretty successful in employing speed cameras so that everybody that traverses a work zone is monitored in these locations. And if you're speeding, you get a ticket.
Right.
There's no exceptions.
And these because you see the signs with the camera on
Exactly.
them. Drivers know, okay, this area is being enforced with cameras.
Right. So, we want the public, the traveling public, to be safe, but we also want our workers in our work zones to be safe. And that's what another aspect of our program is really not just public traveler safety, but our own people that are in work zones, our contractors, our employees. So that's a critical issue.
Right.
Mary brought up the safe systems approach, and this is really something we want people to know about and understand, that it's not just DOT going out and maybe improving an intersection or adding a turn lane or a sign here or there. There's roles for everybody, and one of the things that I like to compare it to is, if you've ever heard of the Swiss cheese model. So if you think about the different aspects of the safe system, you have safe vehicles, safe speed, safe roads. All these things are kind of layers of Swiss cheese, right? So if you think about what we're trying to prevent is a driver or a pedestrian getting in a crash. Well, there's many different ways to do that. So maybe a safe road is not perfect system to protect you. So maybe it's snowing or something. So the safe road may not protect you. But maybe the next layer of Swiss cheese is a safe vehicle. So you've got a modern vehicle with tools to keep you in your lane or whatever. And that might help protect you. But maybe it's an older vehicle. So now you got to rely on the driver's slice of cheese. So what are they doing? Are they impaired? Are they alert? Are they rested? So each of these layers, while they're not perfect, when you put them all together,
There's no hole all the way through.
There's no hole all the way through.
Sure.
So that's how you end up avoiding crashes. So the safe systems approach really kind of mimics that Swiss cheese model in looking at all the different ways collectively we can prevent crashes.
So obviously DOT and state DOT oversees a massive amount of systems. But what about roads that DOT doesn't manage or oversee? How does the department assist local communities in helping to apply these same safe systems to their own roadways? So when I'm driving, it doesn't matter which road I'm on or who owns that road, because honestly, when I'm driving, I don't care. But first of all, I don't know, right? I'm sure most people don't, and ultimately don't care because it doesn't matter in the end to them. All that matters is that they are as safe on whosever road it happens to be. So how are we able to, to help those local communities to make sure that they have that same level of safety that we are ensuring, to all drivers, on our roads?
That's a really good point. And people don't know necessarily what road is owned by who. Wolf Road, for example, is a state route, but it's not it's not labeled as such.
But before I started working for DOT, I didn't give it 1 second of thought and was like, oh, that's not our road. I was like, what do you mean it's not? It's a road in the state of New York. It's not a state road. I never gave it a second of thought.
Yeah, so there's a lot of roads like that out there that are actually, state, but they look like a local. So, we're one DOT and we're one New York State. We do work with our locals very closely. Our strategic highway safety plan is published on our website. We work with our MPOs, our metropolitan planning organizations. They help assist local governments. We work with them very closely as a partnership. Our regions that, have areas that aren't represented by MPOs, we work directly. We have regional local project liaisons, and we work with them, through the distribution of funds, through education. We participate in the Cornell Local Roads Highway School. We have a local programs bureau. As I mentioned before, I used to work in the Safe Routes to School program and the Transportation Alternatives program. We have funding through those for safe pedestrian and, bicycle multi-use paths. But also in the Highway Safety Bureau, we have Highway Safety Improvement Program Fund. So if you didn't have enough acronyms yet, we have HSIP.
That's right.
HSIP, some like to say. So that can be used by the locals to develop their own strategic safety plans or action plans, if it's, pedestrians or intersections. Or right now we have our roadway departure program out right now. We have a local funding call where the locals can access some of the funding that we have set aside at the state level specifically for local roads and addressing some of those high impact areas where there's, head on or roadway departure crashes. So we are assisting them with either developing a plan or implementing projects if they already have a plan in place or if they've identified a location that has a series of these types of crashes.
And there was just a fairly large event not all that long ago that I believe was in Utica that was basically regarding that. I remember hearing the HSIP and wondering, what is that?
Right.
But, and so now we know. But, there was just a fairly large event talking about this very thing and that road departures and working with the community.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
And does that mean like guide rails and helping to purchase those and then putting them in place? That's what you're talking
Correct.
about?
Yep. They can either use their local forces and install, items themselves, or they can hire contractors putting out a bid and installing rumble strips. They can install guide rail. They can install, like median barrier. I'm going to defer to Rob here because I'm probably going to miss some of these things. But there's a number of countermeasures that we've identified. There's local guidance. And just as, a reminder that these projects are due to us, I think, by June. So the deadline's getting close, but our group is busy. Andrew Sattinger oversees our data and safety group, and he and his team are, ferociously fielding questions. So there's a lot of interest, which is great. We want to see those improvements throughout the state and all the roads that we can.
Sorry.
One thing on the local support. So really what we want to do is help locals identify the locations where they can make improvements, like Mary said, provide funding. But we also want to make sure we give them good guidance on how to address those situations. So in the plan, we help them determine what are the most effective ways to treat those crashes, whether it be pavement markings or guide rail or improved signing or things like that. Rumble strips are another major element that we use in roadway departures. Same thing with PSAP, or another acronym, right? Our pedestrian safety action plan used the similar model, looking at data statewide, providing guidance for locals on what they need to do, and then providing funding for them to make projects or do projects and address those sites.
Well, technology can really help us reduce or maybe even eliminate accidents. As we're hearing more and more about vehicle to everything as a way to reduce and perhaps eliminate these completely. Can you kind of explain for those of us who don't know much about it?
VTE for
VTE.
If you want to throw an acronym in there.
What it means and, how it fits into our transportation network now and in the future. Like,
Sure.
I know that we're implementing some of this. There is some communication, right? With
Talking cars.
vehicles,
Yeah,
talking
talking
cars.
cars.
Yeah,
I think we're in various levels of implementation. So it's actually V2X.
Oh, I beg your
okay.
pardon.
We're in interesting times, right? So when you talk about crashes and a lot of the distractions are from our phones, right? So sometimes I say, well, technology is getting into this mess. Technology needs to get us out. So how do we leverage the tools that we have, whether it's the phone that we all use every day, or some vehicle-related technology? So there's different ways to do that. Like right now, we have all of our incident data, work zone information is published on our 511 website. But what most may not know is we also publish another acronym, an API, which is a data feed. It's simply a data feed that companies like Google and Waze intake that data, and they publish it back to the public through things like Waze and Google. If you're using that to navigate somewhere, it'll warn you about an accident ahead, or I should call it a crash.
A crash, Rob.
Crash. Thank
crash.
you. So there's that. That's something we're doing now. We're exploring new ways to use technology to communicate the signal timing to vehicles. So your vehicle may be able to intake that data and warn you that you're approaching a red light, so you should slow down. One of the things that's holding us back is a national standard on how to integrate this. So we're trying to use tools that we have today and data and systems that we have today to begin communicating with people. So it's a work in progress. I think there's a lot of exciting things ahead. The manufacturers of vehicles need to standardize around certain systems, and I think then it's going to really take off.
Now, I say this knowing full well that we cannot delve too deep into this topic, but that kind of leads a little bit towards AI. And Rob, you and I have worked on certain AI things here at the Department of Transportation, and we're actually going to have a podcast about AI coming up later on in the summer. But that obviously is another tool that, when used, I mean, the potential for it could be massive.
Yeah, it's interesting, exciting, and scary all at the same time, right?
Yes.
I mean, we all use AI or around things that contain AI every day. I mean, I'm excited for things like we have traffic cameras, the detection cameras at our intersections that can use, is it AI? Is it not AI? I don't know, but it can detect pedestrians, and if those pedestrians aren't pushing the button, it can give those people more time to cross the street. For example, it'll extend the red time for a vehicle so that it doesn't turn green while there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. That's
that
cool.
added layer of Swiss cheese that you were talking
It's
about.
another piece of cheese. But but there's simple things like that. There's incident detection, passive incident detection. We can use our traffic cameras to determine whether there's a crash on our highway and take appropriate action. All those things are kind of things we can do now. So it's really going to be neat to see what happens coming in the future.
Well, DOT is really focused on engaging with the communities that we serve. We talk about that all the time. But it does seem like this effort involves kind of all layers of government and various industries and then also members of the public. So, how is DOT collaborating kind of across the board, really, in order to better implement this safe systems approach?
It's funny you say that, because I just actually came from a meeting earlier today of a lot of our partners and collecting that safety data, who also input the safety data. So it was a collaboration of state police, Department of Health, DCJS, DMV. That's where we get all of our police reports from that feed into our crash information. So we work with them. We are part of the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. So that's led by DMV, and they have a very, energetic new leader on that group. We've got a meeting coming up there. And again, it's a lot of the same partners focusing on that holistic message that, we got to get the word out. We have to have actionable items. We need to address, crashes. You guys used the term accident earlier. So that presumes that, it's an accident, right? Like it couldn't have happened. We call them crashes because everything is preventable. There's always a contributing factor. And so that's what we're focused on. That's the safe system approach. We look at everything that fits into that little piece of the puzzle. And if this was on, if we had a video and we could show a graphic of this, it kind of looks like that little Trivial Pursuit, that pie, and you have all the little pieces of the pie, and we all have, a little part of that game. And so we're, trying to work together. We work with our partners pretty frequently on different levels, whether it's data, whether it's on messaging. We have a great communications team here at DOT getting out some really, snazzy new PSAs about work zones. I like it.
Oh, you're spreading it on thick, Mary.
Oh, no. Flattery will get you everywhere.
You know, I mean, those are the things that get the message out. That's what goes viral. That's what gets people to pay attention. And that's what we want you to do on our roadways, is pay attention.
Yeah.
But I think safety cuts across all of the programs in this department. It's really interesting. You think about just, okay, snow and ice, like that's a pure safety program when we plow the roads. And we don't just plow our roads by ourselves. There's all the municipal partners that we work with every day. So there's work not just on the project level, but operations every day, working on safety programs as well. Our ETO program, again, it's about safety. It may not be traffic safety every day, but it's about how do we work with all of our partners and some non-traditional partners sometimes to provide safety for the public and the people that we serve.
Right, because there needs to be it can't be whack-a-mole. It can't be like something pops up and you have to kind of attack it at that moment. There's a lot of cross coordination within this department and with our municipalities. And as Josh was talking about, our stakeholders, members of the public, and bringing them into the discussion, which we're definitely seeing a lot more of.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, any final thoughts? Obviously, this is, something that you guys, live and breathe and so very important, the safety of all travelers who are out there. But any final thoughts, for our listeners that you want to get across? Sure. Thanks, Josh. I think this has been great. First of all, thanks for meeting with us today and letting us talk a little bit about safety. But I want to just make sure that one thing is not missed here, and that's the most important part of our program, which is the goal. Our goal is 0 deaths on our highways, and it's reflected in our strategic plan for the first time in this latest version. But everybody in our department should know what our goal is, which is to eliminate highway fatalities, and everything that we do is really working towards that goal. Everybody should make it home for Thanksgiving. There shouldn't be an empty chair at the table at Thanksgiving. It's important no matter whether you're walking, biking, driving a truck, driving your car, that you make it home. And that's, the most important, I think, thing that we do as a department. Well, I certainly, and I know I probably speak for Anya here, I want to thank you guys, first of all, for coming in and chatting with us and telling us a little bit more about this, but also for the work that you guys and your entire team does to, ensure that each and every time that we hit the road, whether we're driving, biking, walking, we are, safer than we were the day before and ultimately looking to achieve that lofty but so very important goal. Well, that'll just about do it for us here from the DOT POD. Thanks again to our guests, and thank you to each and every one of you who tuned in this episode. Certainly, we're glad to have you on board. Anya, another good one here today, another interesting one, another important one.
I love learning about everything that goes on in this department because a lot of times at first blush, it just, you don't really know what it's about. But getting to know the deeper meaning behind these initiatives and projects is always fascinating to me, and I feel that it's very important to get this message out there.
No question about that. So thanks again to our guests, and thanks again for tuning in. For Anya, I'm Josh. We'll be right back here on the DOT POD.